Hey lovelies, it's Kate. Welcome back to another Sims 4 speed build. It's time for an underground mansion. This build is 100% below the surface, completely underground. There's not one single room or part of the build above the surface, but I made still sure that there is enough light coming in by using lots of skylights, and I also removed part of the surface, as you can see here, so enough natural light would come in. And of course I also wanted this to look fancy. I didn't want this to be just a basement essentially, so I did lots of things to turn this into a really fancy, beautiful underground build. I started off by creating a gigantic hole in the ground essentially. My main idea was to have a beautiful palm tree in the center, and to do this I used round foundation pieces, and I used the one with a fence attached to it, the biggest one available. I removed the fence using the sledgehammer tool. I made each piece smaller on both sides, and then I combined them to create a perfect circle. So you can just use a round foundation piece to create a circle like this. You could also create a smaller one by using the smaller foundation piece. I then attached a fence to the round foundation, and I used the sledgehammer tool to remove the flaw in the center. And I then used foundation pieces to kind of fill in the areas on the outside. And as you can see here, all I'm left with is a beautiful hole, just so I would have a way to let lots of natural light in. But I also wanted to have this area for the palm tree, as I said. I then used the tool mod to have a round window facade. I wanted these windows to go all around the round shape. I'm going to remove 2 of them to add doors to this, so the Sims will be able to enter this. And as always, the disclaimer, this build is CC free and it's also unmodded in the gallery, even though I'm using the tool mod by Twisted Maxi, because one of the most amazing things about this mod is that you can use it, you can rotate stuff, and you don't need the mod to grab this from the gallery, and everything will still be rotated and where it's supposed to be. So you can just grab this on console, on PC, you can just let your Sims move in if you want to. Here I'm doing the same thing essentially. I created a round piece by once again combining round foundation pieces, but this time around I've used a smaller one because I wanted to have a smaller circle, and I then used windows, so the windows go all around my round shape, and I then placed the palm tree in the center. At first I only wanted to place the palm tree in the center, but this kind of looked boring, so I decided to do something a bit more fancy, and I added these, like this round shape in the center. I then started to add skylights. These are the living glass floors. You can simply place them on a floor piece and you have a skylight. Essentially I just built a basement and then I added lots of skylights. I feel like the most challenging part about underground builds is just making it look interesting and amazing, because everything is below the surface. You don't really see the build itself. So I just wanted to create all these fancy shapes, just like this one here. I've used the Journey to Batu rug to have a guideline. I then used my beloved pristine pedestal from Get Famous just to have a beautiful shape like this. And I'm going to remove part of the floor. You already saw a brief clip of the build at the very beginning, and I just wanted to open up the floor a bit more, just so more light would come in, just so there would be an area down there where Sims could sit on the outside. So this will be this area. And here you can see I'm just changing up the basement itself. The floor plan is a bit over the top, but I really managed to close off all the areas that I eventually wanted to close off, just so I had some real proper closed rooms down there, which sounds easy because it's just a basement, but the problem was I had removed so many ceilings to just kind of open up part of the build, part of the floor, that I really had to just strategically place on my walls, but it worked out. So the kitchen, the living area, everything is just fully closed. At this point I just wanted to have lots of iron living glass floors, so this is not opened up yet, so I didn't build any outside area yet at this point, but later on I'm going to decide to do that. But this also looks quite cool now that I'm seeing it this way. There's also so much going on, all these shapes, and then later on I'm going to landscape. And because everything is kind of overgrown, it's almost hard to see every single part of the build at first glance, but I really like to add lots of plants. It looks really natural. At first I wanted to add an eco twist to this, but I didn't for some reason. So it's just like really beautiful and green, lots of bushes and trees and everything, but there's not really an eco aspect. But I mean, you could always modify a build like this if you own eco lifestyle. Here I worked on the other side of the build where I wanted to have an almost identical round shape. It's just a bit smaller, and you can here see how I've just removed the ceiling. You can see the basement below, and you can see how I'm filling in the area on the outside. And this way I only had the hole in the ground in the shape that I wanted to. And I've used the grass color or lawn from Eco Lifestyle. And the cool thing is that the color is almost identical to the terrain color here, so it's not really that visible. In some worlds the lawn is like really bright and green, and then you can see a difference depending on which swatch or which floor you use basically. But here it was really easy to just kind of hide the areas where I'd used a floor piece, and this was really easy. And here I started to add some other living glass floors just so I had a beautiful skylight once again, and you can here see the opened up area. I've added some shelves to have a custom exterior trim because I wasn't able to add any exterior trim down there because it's a basement, but I wanted to add more details, so I decided to use this white base game shelf. And I added the doors from Eco Lifestyle, and I just wanted this area for a table, some chairs. Your Sims could just have dinner out there or whatever. The kitchen is going to be down there on the left side. So on the inside there's also going to be a dining table, and if the Sims want to, they can just step on the outside and just eat there. I just wanted to have like this beautiful area where you can just enjoy the outdoors and everything. Here I started to landscape. I added lots of base game hedges actually. I wanted to have a beautiful round shape. I also wanted to hide some of the imperfections and edges, and then it was time to work on the floor plan a bit. Down there it's a mess, I have to admit. You know how I'm always working on the exterior first and then I take a look on the inside, and I never know what's going on there, and I just try to make the best out of it. Here it was kind of the same, just a bit more extreme because I just used the basement tool and added stuff and I had no idea what's going on. But I made sure that it's symmetrical, that it looks nice and neat, and you can see how I'm placing some palm trees in the back, and this is going to be a proper outdoor area. I'm going to add a pool and everything. So even though this is completely underground, as I said, your Sims have everything they need, including a garden and a pool. So this is super cool and fancy. I've created some underground builds in the past, but part of the build was above the basement level, kind of. It was just on ground level, and I've used some rocks and stuff to just kind of merge the house into the terrain, which is also a way of doing it. But this time around I really wanted to only build in the basement. This was kind of the challenge for me. I always love to work on exteriors, and it's like really fun to add more stuff to the exterior to make your build look interesting, to change the shape, to work out the shape. So I really had to hold myself back here. And here I'm adding some debug objects. This is like a flower bed from Debug. It's part of the base game. And this kind of rock thingy going around it is from Get Together. I just wanted to accentuate this beautiful round shape. And then I started to furnish finally. So this is the kitchen. You saw this outdoor area where I've talked about opening up the ceiling, where I added the table in the center. It's on the left from that area. So the Sims can just step out and have lunch or dinner, breakfast, whatever on the outside if they want to. But of course, if the weather is bad or something, they could also just stay on the inside because all these rooms are fully closed. And I just wanted this to be a bit modern and fancy. I also added lots of plants on the inside as well. I wanted to have lots of shelves and cabinets. Once again, I know some of these cabinets are too high to reach and your Sims would need a ladder, but it is what it is at this point. It's just the typical KateEmerald kitchen, I guess. I think the island counter is super fancy and beautiful. I combined a round shape because once again I wanted to include a round shape, and I just have this round shape attached at the corner where I've placed some bar stools so your Sims could sit down, and here you see the dining area. So I think that this room just has the perfect size. It's really spacious, like a nice mansion, but it's also not too too big. There's a nice connection to the outdoor area, and I think it looks really fancy. This painting that I just placed and rotated is from the base game. It was added in a recent update, and I love it. I'm just so obsessed with this painting. It's so beautiful. And I then just added a fireplace. The thing is, when you build a regular house, you can just add lots of windows, and I really like to add many windows. Most of the time too many. I sometimes have to make some changes, so I really have an empty wall to build a kitchen, for example. But in this case, the problem is when you're building in the basement, there aren't any windows at all, really. The only exception is the area where I had removed the ceiling, so there would be some natural light, which also works fantastically. You can see it here. It's like really bright and sun flooded, even though it's in the basement. However, you cannot add any windows to the walls, and then the walls are sometimes quite empty, so I wanted to use more cabinets over here to create some shelves and everything, and just for the TV and stuff, because I really wanted to use the space somehow. I didn't just want to place many paintings everywhere. I mean, I've used plenty, but I just really didn't want to go overboard, so I've added lots of like cabinets and stuff, or a mirror, and just this table, just different things to really fill in all the walls. You can here see that I just built a little nook where Sims could sit, maybe read. I also built a desk, so this is like a proper living room, and in the center we have this beautiful outdoor area. And this here is a bedroom, or 2 bedrooms actually. I decided to just split the room just so I could add 2 bedrooms to this. I could have used bunk beds, but I decided to do it this way. The bedroom kind of looks like a hotel room, very typical, and you have the TV in front of the bed and everything. So this build has enough space for a small Sim family or a regular sized Sims family. We have this double bed and the other 2 beds, so there's enough space. You could also add a bunk bed. There's also one in the base game, if I'm not wrong. So there's enough space, even though this is like a bit weird and out of the ordinary build. It's still a proper family home, and it has anything your Sims need. I think one of my favorite parts is kind of like the underground garden, because it's like so out of the ordinary, and I was really happy that I had enough space to really have this spacious, beautiful outdoor area, because I feel like otherwise it might feel a bit, I don't know, not too good when you're like living in the basement here. Here you can see the outdoor area. I added some vines from cottage living. I then added a beautiful pool. We have the palm trees that I had already added earlier. The planting pot is actually a base game fountain. I added a small floaty, and then I just wanted to have an area where you could sit and hang out. I didn't want to add another table and chairs because we have the other outdoor area already. So that's just everything you would need to just have a beautiful life in this mansion. And this is it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this build and video. This build is available in the gallery. My ID is KateEmerald. You can also grab the tray files from my Patreon. And speaking of which, it's time to thank my wonderful Emerald Patreons. A big thank you to Asia, Saturated Spark, Shanna McClam, Shada Chase, and Helena Lund. Thank you so much, and a big thank you to all my other Patreons. A thank you to anyone who watches my videos. I love you so much. I hope you are all doing well. I wish you a absolutely perfect week, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye!